Okay, welcome everyone to Storybook Mondays. Today we're going to be reading Winnie-the-Pooh. So, you can see Winnie-the-Pooh. Alright? Excuse me. Sorry, so this book is a little bit harder than the book we read last week. Alright, but still has some images in it. Alright, so let's move on. Winnie-the-Pooh. Alright. There we go. First page, you can see there is a little bit of a map of sorts. Alright. Winnie-the-Pooh. You can see there is a image on the left. Alright, let's read the introduction. Alright, so, introduction. If you happen to have read another book about Christopher Robin, you may remember that he once had a swan, or the swan had Christopher Robin. I don't know which. And that he used to call this swan Pooh. That was a long time ago. And when we said goodbye, we took the name with us, as we didn't think the swan would want it anymore. Well, when Edward Bear said that he would like an exciting name all to himself, Christopher Robin said at once, without stopping to think, that he was Winnie-the-Pooh. And he was. So I have explained the Pooh part, but now I'll explain the rest of it. Ooh, interesting. You can't be in London for long without going to the zoo. There are some people who begin the zoo at the beginning, called way in, and walk as quickly as they can past every cage until they get to the one called way out. But the nicest people go straight to the animal they love most and stay there. So, when Christopher Robin goes to the zoo, he goes to where the polar bears are, and he whispers something to the third keeper from the left. The doors are unlocked. And we wander through the dark passages and up the steep stairs until at last we come to the special cage, and the cage is open, and out trots something brown and furry. And with a happy cry of, "Oh, bear!" Christopher Robin rushes into its arms. Now, this bear's name is Winnie, which shows what a good name for bears it is. But funny thing is that we can't remember whether Winnie is called after Pooh or Pooh after Winnie. We did know once, but we have forgotten. Hey, Rebecca. I had written as far as this when Piglet looked up and said in a squeaky voice, "What about me?" "My dear Piglet," I said, "the whole book is about you. So it is about Pooh," he squeaked. You see what it is. He is jealous, but he thinks Pooh is having a grand introduction all to himself. Pooh is the favorite, of course. There's no denying it. But Piglet comes in for a good many things which Pooh misses, because you can't take Pooh to school without everybody knowing it. But Piglet is so small that he slips into a pocket where it is very comfortable to feel him when you're not quite sure whether twice 7 is 12 or 22. Sometimes he slips out and has a good look in the ink pot, and in this way he got more education than Pooh. But Pooh doesn't mind. Some have brains and some haven't, he says, and there it is. And now all the others are saying, "What about us?" So perhaps the best thing to do is stop writing introductions and get on with the book. Alright. Let's see the next page. Alright, so the next page is the table of contents. Okay. And table of contents. Alright. So it looks like we are officially starting Winnie-the-Pooh. Alright. Chapter 1. Ooh, there's a little illustration on the left, in which we are introduced to Winnie-the-Pooh and some bees, and the stories begin. Alright. Here is Edward Bear coming downstairs now, bump, 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 on the back of his head, behind Christopher Robin. It is as far as he knows, and the only way of coming downstairs. But sometimes he feels that there really is another way. If only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. And then he feels that perhaps there isn't. Anyhow, here he is at the bottom and ready to be introduced to you. Winnie-the-Pooh. When I first heard his name, I said, just as you are going to say, but I thought he was a boy. So did I, said Christopher Robin. Then you can't call him Winnie. I don't. But you said he's Winnie-the-Pooh. Don't you know what there means? Yes. Now I do, I said quickly, and I hope you do too. Because it is all the explanation you're going to get. Sometimes Winnie-the-Pooh likes a game of some sort when he's coming downstairs, and sometimes he likes to sit quietly in front of the fire and listen to a story. This evening. What about a story? Said Christopher Robin. What about a story? I said. Could you very sweetly tell Winnie-the-Pooh one? I suppose I could, I said. What sort of stories does he like? About himself, because he's that sort of bear. Oh, I see. So could you very sweetly? I'll try, I said. So I tried. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, about last Friday, Winnie-the-Pooh lived in a forest all by himself under the name of Sanders. What does he mean by under the name mean? Asked Christopher Robin. It means he had the name over the door in gold letters and lived under it. Winnie-the-Pooh wasn't quite sure, said Christopher Robin. Now I am, said a growly voice. Then I will go on, said I. And there's an illustration of Winnie-the-Pooh under, Mr. Saunders. One day he was out walking. He came to an open place in the middle of the forest, and in the middle place was a large oak tree, and from the top of the tree there came a loud buzzing noise. Winnie-the-Pooh sat down at the front of the tree, put his head between his paws, and began to think. First of all, he said to himself, the buzzing noise means something. You don't get a buzzing noise like that. Just buzzing and buzzing without its meaning something. If there's a buzzing noise, somebody's making a buzzing noise, and the only reason for making a buzzing noise that I know of is because you're a bee. Then he thought another long time and said, the only reason for being a bee that I know of is making honey. And then he got up and said, and the only reason for making honey is so I can eat. So he began to climb the tree. He climbed, and 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 he sang a little song to himself. It went like this. Isn't it funny how a bear likes honey? Buzz, buzz, buzz. I wonder why he does. And there is a little illustration on the right page of him climbing a tree. Then he climbed a little further, and a little further, and then just a little further. By the time he had thought of another song. It's a very funny thought that if bears were bees, they build their nests at the bottom of trees. And that being so, if the bees were bears, we shouldn't have to climb all up these stairs. He was getting rather tired by this time, so that is why he sang a complaining song. He was nearly there now, and if he stood on a branch, that crack. Ooh, no, he's falling. Oh, help, said Pooh as he dropped 10 feet on the branch below him. If only I had it, he said, as he bounced 20 feet to the next branch. You see, what I meant to do, he explained as he turned head over heels and crashed on another branch 30 feet below. What I meant to do, of course, it was rather, he admitted as he slithered very quickly through the next 6 branches. It all comes, I suppose, he decided as he said goodbye to the last branch, spun around 3 times and fell gracefully into a gorse bush. It all comes of liking honey so much. Oh, help. He crawled out of the gorse bush, brushed the prickles from his nose, and began to think again. And the first person he thought of was Christopher Robin. Was that me? Said Christopher in an odd voice, barely daring to believe it. That was you. Christopher Robin said nothing, but his ears got larger and larger, and his face got pinker and pinker. So Winnie-the-Pooh went round to his friend, Christopher Robin, who lived behind a green door in another part of the forest. Good morning, Christopher Robin, he said. Good morning, Winnie-the-Pooh, said you. And as you can see, there's an illustration of Christopher Robin and Winnie-the-Pooh. I wonder, I've got such a thing as a balloon about you. If you've got such a thing as a balloon about you. A balloon? Yes, I said to myself coming along, I wonder if Christopher Robin has such a thing as a balloon about him. I said to myself, thinking about balloons and wondering, what do you want a balloon for, you said. Winnie-the-Pooh looked around to see that nobody was listening, put his paw in his mouth and said in a deep whisper, honey. But you don't get honey with balloons. I do, said Pooh. Well, it just happened that I've been to a party that day before at the house of your friend Piglet, and you had balloons at the party. You had a big green balloon, and one of Rabbit's relations had a big blue one and left it behind, being really too young to go to a party at all. So you had brought the green one and the blue one home with you. Which one would you like? You asked Pooh. He put his head between his paws and thought very carefully. It's like this, he said. When you go after honey with balloons, and the great thing is not to let the bees know that you're coming. Now, if you have a green balloon, they might think that you're only part of the tree and not notice you. And if you have a blue balloon, they might think you're part of the sky and not notice you. The question is, which is the most likely? Wouldn't they notice you underneath the balloon, you asked? They might or they might not, said Winnie-the-Pooh. You can never tell with bees. He thought for a moment and said, I shall try to look like a small black cloud. That will deceive them. Then you had better have a blue balloon, you said, and so was decided. Well, you both went out with a blue balloon and you took your gun with you just in case, as you always did. And Winnie-the-Pooh went to a very muddy place that he knew of and rolled until he was black all over, and then when the balloon was blown up as big as you and Pooh were both holding on to the string, you let go, settling it, and Pooh Bear floated gracefully up into the sky and stayed there, level with the top of the tree, about 20 feet away from it. Hooray, you shouted. Isn't that fine? Shouted Winnie-the-Pooh. Down to you. What do I look like? You look like a bear holding onto a balloon, you said. Not, said Winnie-the-Pooh anxiously, not like a small black cloud in the blue sky? Not very much. Ah, well, perhaps from up here it looks different. And, as I say, you never can tell with bees. There was no wind to blow him nearer to the tree, so he stayed there. He could see the honey, he could smell the honey, but he couldn't quite reach the honey. After a little while, he called down to you, Christopher Robin, he said in a loud whisper. Hello! I think the bees suspect something. What sort of thing? I don't know. But something tells me that they're suspicious. Perhaps they think that you're after their honey. It may be that. You can never tell with bees. There was another silence, and then he called down to you again. Christopher Robin? Yes? Have you an umbrella in your house? I think so. I wish you would bring it out here and walk up and down with it and look at me every now and then and say, tut, tut, it looks like it's going to, it looks like rain. I think if you did that, it would help the deception of which you're practicing on these bees. Well, you laughed to yourself, silly old bear, but you didn't say it out loud because you were so fond of him and you went home for your umbrella. Oh, there you are, called down Winnie-the-Pooh as soon as you got back to the tree. I was beginning to get anxious. I've discovered that the bees are now definitely suspicious. Shall I put up my umbrella, you said? Yes, but wait a moment. We must be practical. The important bee to deceive is the queen bee. Can you see which is the queen bee from down there? No. A pity. Well, now, if you walk up and down with your umbrella saying, tut, tut, it looks like a rain, I shall do what I can by singing a little cloud song, such as a cloud might sing. Go. So while you walked up and down and wondered if it would rain, Winnie-the-Pooh sang his song. How sweet to be a cloud floating in the blue. Every little cloud always sings aloud. How sweet to be a cloud floating in the blue. It makes him very proud to be a little cloud. The bees were still buzzing as suspiciously as ever. Some of them, indeed, left their nests and flew all round the cloud as it began the second verse of this song. Cloud for a moment and then got up again. Christopher Robin, called out the cloud. Yes, I've been thinking, and I've come to a very important decision. These are the wrong sort of bees. Are they? Quite the wrong sort. So I think they would make the wrong sort of honey. Shouldn't you? Would they? Yes, I think I shall come down. How? You asked. Winnie-the-Pooh hadn't thought about that. If he let go of the string, he could fall, bump, and he didn't like that idea. So he thought for a long time, and then he said, Christopher Robin, you must shoot the balloon with your gun. Have you got your gun? Of course I have, you said. But if I do that, it will spoil the balloon, you said. But if you don't, said Pooh, I shall have to let go, and that would spoil me. When you put it like this, you saw how it was, and you aimed very carefully at the balloon and fired. Ow, said Pooh. Did I miss? You asked. You didn't exactly miss, said Pooh, but you missed the balloon. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, you said. You fired again, and this time you hit the balloon, and the air came slowly out, and Winnie-the-Pooh floated down to the ground. But his arms were so stiff from holding the string of the balloon, all that time that they stayed up straight in the air for more than a week. And whenever a fly came and settled on his nose, he had to blow it off. And I think, but I'm not sure, that is why he was always called Pooh. Is that the end of the story? Asked Christopher Robin. That's the end of that one. There are others. About me and Pooh? About Pooh and me? And Piglet and Rabbit and all of you. Don't you remember? I do remember. And then when I try to remember, I forget. That day when Pooh and Piglet tried to catch the heffalump, they didn't catch it. Did they? No. Pooh couldn't because he hasn't any brain. Did I catch it? Well, That comes into the story. Christopher Robin nodded. I do remember, he said. Only Pooh doesn't. Very well, so that's why he likes having it told to him again. Because then it's a real story and not just remembering. That's just how I feel, I said. Christopher Robin gave a deep sigh, picked his bear up by the leg, and walked off to the door, trailing Pooh behind him. At the door, he turned and said, "Coming to see me have my bath?" "I might," I said. I didn't hurt him when I shot him, did I? Not a bit. He nodded and went out, and in a moment I heard Winnie-the-Pooh bump, 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 going up the stairs behind him. Alright, we are moving on to Chapter 2. Pooh goes visiting and gets into a tight place. Edward Bear, known to his friends as Winnie-the-Pooh, or Pooh for short, was walking through the forest one day, humming proudly to himself. He had made up a little hum that very morning as he was doing a stoutness exercise in front of the glass. Tra-la-la-la-la, tra-la-la. As he stretched up as high as he could, tra-la-la. As he stretched up as high as he could, then tra-la-la, oh help. As he tried to reach his toes, after breakfast he had said it over and over to himself until he had learnt it off by heart, and now he was humming right through properly, and it went like this. Tra-la-la, tra-la-la, tra-la-la. Rum-tum, tiddle, tum. Tiddle, iddle, tiddle, iddle, tiddle, iddle, rum-tum, tum, tiddle, Well, he was humming this hum to himself and walking along gaily, wondering what everybody else was doing and what it felt like being somebody else. And when suddenly he came to a sandy bank, and in the bank was a large hole. "Aha!" said Pooh. Rum-tum-tiddle-tum. "If I know anything about anything, that hole means rabbit," he said. "And rabbit means company," he said. "And company means food and listening to me humming and such like rum-tum-tum-tiddle-um." So he bent down, put his head into the hole, and called out, "Is anybody home?" There was a sudden scuffling noise from inside the hole, and then silence. What I said was, "Is anybody home?" called out Pooh very loudly. "No," said a voice, and then added, "You needn't shout so loud. I heard you quite well the first time." "Bother," said Pooh. "Isn't there anybody here at all?" "Nobody." Winnie-the-Pooh took his head out of the hole and thought for a little, and he thought to himself, "There must be somebody there, because somebody must have said nobody." So he put his head back into the hole and said, "Hello, Rabbit, isn't that you?" "No," said Rabbit, in a different sort of voice this time. "But isn't that Rabbit's voice?" "I don't think so," said Rabbit. "It isn't meant to be." "Oh," said Pooh. He took his head out of the hole and had another think, and then he put it back in and said, "Well, could you very kindly tell me where Rabbit is?" "He has gone to see his friend Pooh Bear, who is a great friend of his." "But that is me," said Bear, very much surprised. "What sort of me?" "Pooh Bear. Are you sure?" said Rabbit, still more surprised. Quite sure," said Pooh. "Oh, well then, come in." So Pooh pushed and pushed his way through the hole, and at last got in. "You were quite right," said Rabbit, looking at him all over. "It is you. Glad to see you." "Who did you think it was?" "Well, I wasn't sure. You know how it is in the forest. One can't have anybody coming into one's house. One has to be careful. What about a mouthful of something?" Pooh always liked a little something at 11 o'clock in the morning, but he was very glad to see Rabbit getting out the plates and mugs, and when Rabbit said, "Honey or condensed milk with your bread," he was so excited that he said both. And then, So as not to seem greedy, he added, "But don't bother about the bread, please." And for a long time after that he said nothing, until at last, humming to himself in a rather sticky voice, he got up, shook Rabbit lovingly by the paw, and said that he must be going. "Must you?" said Rabbit politely. "Well," said Pooh, "I could stay a little longer if you," and he tried very hard to look in the direction of the larder. "As a matter of fact," said Rabbit, "I was going out myself directly." "Oh, well then, I'll be going on. Goodbye." "Well, goodbye, if you sure you won't have any more." "Is there any more?" asked Pooh quickly. Rabbit took the covers off the dishes and said, "No, there isn't." "I thought not," said Pooh, nodding to himself. "Well, goodbye, I must be going on." So he started to climb out of the hole. He pulled with his front paws and pushed with his back paws, and in a little while his nose was out in the open again, and then his ears, and then his front paws, and then his shoulders, and then... "Oh, help!" said Pooh. "I'd better go back." "Oh, bother!" said Pooh. "I shall have to go on." "I can't do either," said Pooh. "Oh, help and bother." Now by this time Rabbit wanted to go for a walk too, and finding the front door full, he went out by the back door and came around to Pooh and looked at him. "Hello? Are you stuck?" he asked. No," said Pooh carefully, "just resting and thinking and humming to myself. Here, give us a paw." Pooh stretched out his paw, and Rabbit pulled and pulled and pulled. "Ow!" cried Pooh, "you're hurting." "The fact is," said Rabbit, "you're stuck." "It all comes," said Pooh crossly, "of not having front doors big enough." "It all comes," said Rabbit sternly, "of eating too much. I thought at the time," said Rabbit. "Only I didn't like to say anything," said Rabbit. "That one of us was eating too much," said Rabbit, "and I knew it wasn't me." He said, "Well, well, I shall go and fetch Christopher Robin." Christopher Robin lived at the other end of the forest. When he came back with Rabbit and saw the front half of Pooh, he said, "Silly old bear," in such a loving voice that everybody felt quite hopeful again. "It was just the beginning. I was just beginning to think," said Bear, sniffing slightly, "that Rabbit might never be able to use his front door again, and I should hate that." "So should I," said Rabbit. "Use his front door again?" said Christopher Robin. "Of course he'll use his front door again." "Good," said Rabbit. "If we can't pull you out," Pooh said, we might have to push you back." Rabbit scratched his whisker thoughtfully and pointed out that when once Pooh was pushed back, and he was back, and of course nobody was more glad to see Pooh than he was, still there it was. Some lived in trees and some lived underground, and... "You mean I'd never get out?" said Pooh. "I mean," said Rabbit, "that having got so far, it seems a pity to waste it." Christopher Robin nodded. "There was only one thing to be done," he said. "We shall have to wait for you to get thin again." "How long does getting thin take?" asked Pooh anxiously. "About a week, I should think. But I can stay here for a week." "You can stay here, all right, silly old bear. It's getting you out which is so difficult." "We'll read to you," said Rabbit carefully, "and I hope it won't snow," he added. "And I say, old fellow, you're taking up a good deal of my room in my house. Do you mind if I use your back legs as a towel horse? Because I mean that they are doing nothing, and it'll be very inconvenient just to hang the towels on them." "A week?" said Pooh gloomingly. "What about meals?" "I'm afraid no meals," said Christopher Robin, "because of getting thin quickly. But we will read to you." Bear again sighed, and then he found he couldn't because he was so tightly stuck, and a tear rolled down his eyes, and as he said, then would you read a sustaining book such as would help and comfort a wedged bear in a great tightness? So for a week, Christopher Robin read that sort of book at the north end of Pooh. And Rabbit hung his washing on the south end. That is hilarious. And in between, Bear felt himself get slenderer and slenderer. At the end of the week, Christopher Robin said, "Now!" So Pooh took his front paws, and Rabbit took hold of Christopher Robin, and all the Rabbit's friends and relations took hold of Rabbit, and they all pulled together. And for a long time, Pooh said "ow" and "oh," and then all of a sudden, he said "pop," just as if a cork were coming out of a bottle. And Christopher Robin and Rabbit and all Rabbit's friends and relations went head over heels backwards, and on top of them came Winnie-the-Pooh free. So, with a nod of thanks to his friends, he went on with his walk through the forest, humming proudly to himself, but Christopher Robin looked after him lovingly and said to himself, "Silly old bear." Alright, let's put a bookmark in that, and because next page will be chapter 3. So we will call it there, and we will continue the book next episode, which will be next week at 4 p.m. Alright, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and we will continue Winnie-the-Pooh chapter 3 next week. Alright, thanks for joining me. Take care.